administration insists to start a negotiation and then in the middle of negotiation, attack.
On February 28, 2026, Washington and Jerusalem abandoned proxy warfare, launching a coordinated direct assault on Iranian infrastructure. Even though the military might of Israel and America is far superior to Iran's, it seemed that it would be an easy win for America and Israel. But this war has proven how Iran is self-sufficient in defense, forcing a stalemate that has pushed both sides toward the negotiating table. However, with absolutely no common ground or understanding between the warring parties, these talks look less like a path to peace and more like a desperate face-saving maneuver for Washington to mask a conflict that has spiraled out of its control. In the minutes following the surgical strikes that erased Iran's top leadership, Washington waited for a revolution that never materialized. Instead of a map erupting in rebellion, cities surged with millions of mourners, turning a calculated strike into a catalyst for national unity. To carry out the operation, Israel and the United States had initiated a massive series of strikes, leveraging a vast network of Middle Eastern bases and the carrier strike groups of the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea and the USS Gerald R. Ford in the Mediterranean Sea. Iran's response was swift and devastating. A massive volley of ballistic missiles and kamikaze drones erupted from its borders, targeting US and Israeli assets across 13 nations, from the Gulf states of Saudi Arabia, Oman, the UAE, and Qatar, and as far as Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Israel. Just hours into the escalation, a strike from the US and Israel hit an Iranian school, killing hundreds of children. Simultaneously, Israel launched a massive attack, decimating Iran's nuclear sites and incinerating the South Pars gas field, the economic heart of the nation. Qatar issued a sharp criticism of Israel's strike on the South Pars field, but the fuse was already lit. Fueled by a dark fury, Tehran launched a precise retaliation against the region's most vital systems. In Israel, missiles struck the Bazan oil refinery and the high-security Dimona nuclear facility. They blinded air travel by destroying Kuwait's airport radar. Iran then choked the world's energy supply, hitting Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG facility and the massive oil hubs in Fujairah and Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura refinery. But the most modern blow was digital. By destroying AWS data centers in the UAE and Bahrain, Iran crippled the internet and banking systems across the Gulf. This wasn't just a counterattack, it was a total shutdown of the modern world. The cycle of destruction was now coming from both sides, leaving the region in ruins. But the physical destruction of the land was only half the story. The true strategic trap was far more suffocating. This war was hitting the global economy with a force never seen before, and it all came down to a blockade on a tiny stretch of water connecting the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. Think about it. Countries like Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and even Iran itself have no other way to move their oil. This one strait handles 1/5 of the world's crude and LNG. But the impact isn't just limited to energy. Half of the world's urea and half of its sulfur pass through these waters. This blockade wasn't just killing the energy supply, it was strangling global agriculture and paralyzing the semiconductor industry. The spiral began after Iran targeted that Thai cargo ship and several other vessels in the opening days of the conflict. Since then, the strait had become a ghost town. It was effectively closed. Insurance costs skyrocketed to the point where no commercial vessel would even attempt the crossing. The world's supply chain wasn't just slowing down, it was stopping. But the question arises, how was Iran actually able to provide such a strong resistance to the USA and Israel? Iran's resilience was etched into the earth itself. The towering Zagros and Alborz mountains acted as natural fortresses, shielding the heartland and providing the IRGC with the bedrock needed to house underground missile cities. To the east, the scorched expanses of the Dashti Kavir and Dashti Lut deserts served as inhospitable buffers, swallowing any prospect of a ground advance. But the tactical crown jewel was Bandar Abbas. Situated on the lip of the Strait of Hormuz, the port allowed Iran to project asymmetric power directly into the world's jugular. In this landscape, the high-tech invaders found themselves fighting not just a military, but the very geology of the Iranian plateau. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, what about NATO? Where are they in all of this? If this is the most powerful military alliance in history, why didn't they step in and end this? Well, here is the thing you have to understand. NATO's core promise, the very reason it exists, is collective defense. It was built to prevent war and protect its members from being attacked. But this conflict in Iran stood in sharp contrast to that mission. Because many allies viewed this as an offensive and unjust war, the alliance didn't unite. It rebelled from within. Think about it. Spain completely closed its military bases and airspace to the US, making it clear they wouldn't lift a finger to support what they called an illegal conflict. Italy flat out refused to let US bombers use its bases, and France put a chokehold on the transport of weapons via its airspace. Even the UK and France, usually Washington's closest partners, decided to go their own way, planning a peaceful maritime mission to protect trade that they refused to even start until the actual fighting was over. So while Donald Trump was publicly attacking and humiliating NATO allies for this lack of support, the allies stood their ground. For them, joining an offensive strike like this went against the very purpose of the alliance. In the end, the US realized a hard truth. The political resistance from its own partners was a barrier just as difficult to overcome as the mountains of Iran themselves.